The blue-white pulsar at the edge of the trellis system pulsed with metronomic precision, casting spectral shadows across the grand diplomatic station that orbited the dead star. Trellis 9 was a marvel of interspecies engineering, a nexus of corridors, chambers, and habitation pods designed to accommodate the biological needs of 17 major galactic species and twice as many minor ones. Its central rotunda, with its vast holographic displays and ancient ceremonial fixtures, had witnessed a millennium of peace talks, trade negotiations, and alliance formations. Today, it would witness something else entirely. Elan Mira stood at the viewport of her quarters, watching the pulse of the distant pulsar. Each flash illuminated her face in stark relief, high cheekbones, determined jawline, and eyes that carried the weight of Earth's expectations. At 32, she was the youngest human ever appointed to represent Earth at the Galactic Peace Alliance Summit, a distinction that filled her with both pride and dread. Ambassador Mira, came a deep voice from behind her. The preliminary session begins in 20 minutes. She turned to face Captain Neary, her Earth Guard escort. The tall, weathered soldier stood at parade rest, his ceremonial uniform adorned with the distinctive blue and green shoulder patch of Earth's diplomatic corps. Unlike the flashier uniforms of other species' honor guards, Earth's was deliberately understated, a reminder of humility earned through historical lessons. "Is it true what they're saying, Captain?" Elan asked, adjusting the formal collar of her own midnight blue diplomatic attire. "That the Corax are formally challenging our seat?" Nira's expression remained carefully neutral, but his eyes, those of a man who had seen the dark smile conflict that had nearly consumed 3 star systems, hardened slightly. Intelligence suggests their new High Consul sees Earth as an anachronism, a relic given undue respect. Elan nodded, turning back to the pulsing star beyond the viewport. Perhaps he's right. Earth isn't what it was. We haven't been a military power in 4 centuries? Our colonies are self-governed. Our fleet is ceremonial, and our population is a fraction of the major empires. And yet, Nira said quietly, every peace summit in 1,000 years has held a seat reserved for humans. Tradition, Elan murmured dismissively. Perhaps. The captain's voice took on an unusual edge. Or perhaps there's more to tradition than meets the eye. Before Elan could press him further, the station's communication system chimed softly. Ambassador Mira, came the mellifluous, multi-tonal voice of the station's Venari liaison. Your presence is requested at the protocol chamber before the General Assembly. Elan straightened her shoulders and nodded to Neary. Let's not keep them waiting. Captain, apparently, we have a tradition to defend. The protocol chamber of Trellis 9 was a study in diplomatic neutrality. Its walls shifted subtly in hue to ensure no species perception registered a color associated with aggression or deception in their culture. The central table, an oval crafted from a material that resembled both stone and liquid, accommodated 14 primary representatives, with space for advisors behind each seat. When Elan entered, flanked by Captain Neary, 12 of those seats were already occupied by beings whose evolutionary paths had diverged from humanity's by billions of years and light years. The 13th seat, Earth's seat, awaited her. The 14th remained conspicuously empty. Ambassador Mira of Earth, announced the chamber's protocol officer, a slender Methusian whose translucent skin revealed the rhythmic pulse of multiple hearts. The Alliance acknowledges your credentials and welcomes your voice. Elan inclined her head in the precise 15-degree bow that denoted respect without subservience, a gesture calculated to the millimeter by generations of diplomatic advisors. The Corax delegation is delayed, the protocol officer continued, but has transmitted formal notice of their intention to raise procedural questions regarding Earth's permanent representation status. A ripple of subtle movements passed through the assembled representatives, the equivalent of murmurs in a dozen different physiologies. As Elan took her seat, she felt the weight of ancient tradition pressing down upon her shoulders. The Earth chair was neither the most ornate nor the most prominent, yet somehow it seemed to carry a significance beyond its modest appearance. Ambassador Mira, came a melodious voice to her right. It has been many cycles since Earth sent one so young to our deliberations. Elon turned to meet the faceted eyes of Ambassador Selatora of the Venari Concord, one of the Alliance's founding civilizations. The Venari's chitinous exoskeleton gleamed with embedded bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her mood, currently displaying a pattern that Elon recognized as cautious interest. The Council of Nations felt fresh perspective might be valuable. Elon replied diplomatically. Though the truth was more pragmatic, most senior diplomats had been reluctant to defend Earth's increasingly tenuous position against the rising Corax Empire. Fresh perspective, Selatora echoed, her mandibles clicking softly in what humans had learned was amusement. How diplomatic. Yet I wonder if you've been adequately briefed on the historical context of your position. Before Elon could respond, the chamber's entrance dilated open, and a contingent of figures entered with deliberate, synchronized movements. The Corax delegation had arrived. Where most species sent diplomatic teams that reflected diversity of thought, the Corax moved as a singular entity. 6 identical representatives, whether biological or mechanized was impossible to discern beneath their obsidian exosuits, flanked a central figure whose armor bore subtle crimson patterns. Ambassador Vornik of the Great Corax Void, the protocol officer announced, and even the usually impassive Methusian's voice carried a hint of tension. The central figure stepped forward, the articulated joints of his exosuit whirring with precision. Though his face remained hidden behind a featureless mask, his posture communicated calculated dominance. The Corax acknowledged the alliance. Vornik's voice emerged, artificially modulated, yet somehow conveying immense self-assurance. And we formally request the floor when procedural matters are addressed. The order of business places procedural matters third, after security updates and trade corridor adjustments. The protocol officer stated, "The Corax motion to amend the agenda." Vornik countered smoothly. "Our procedural concern impacts all subsequent discussions." Another ripple through the assembled delegates, this time carrying undertones of tension. Changing established protocol was rare and considered borderline hostile. Elon felt Selatora shift beside her. "I second the motion for immediate consideration," the Venari ambassador stated, surprising everyone in the chamber, including Elon. Protocol demanded a vote. One by one, the representatives signaled their positions. To Elon's dismay, a majority supported the agenda change. "The motion carries," the protocol officer announced. "Ambassador Vornik, you have the floor." The Corax representative stepped to the center of the chamber, his movements fluid despite the apparent weight of his exosuit. With a gesture, he activated the chamber's holographic display, projecting a 3-dimensional rendering of the Alliance's governance structure, a complex web of connections between member worlds, with 14 nodes highlighted in gold to represent the permanent representatives. "Esteemed colleagues," Vornik began, his modulated voice filling the chamber. "The Great Corax Void comes before you today not as disruptors, but as restorers of logical order. We bring attention to an anachronism that undermines the very foundation of our shared governance." He gestured, and the holographic display zoomed in on Earth's node. Humanity's permanent seat on this council was established in the aftermath of the Second Galactic Extinction event, nearly 7 millennia ago. At that time, Earth represented a significant military, economic, and colonial power. Today, the display shifted, showing comparative metrics of fleet strength, economic output, population distribution, and colonial reach. Earth's indicators were dwarfed by those of the major powers, including the rapidly expanding Corax. Today, Earth retains its position through sentiment, not strength, through tradition, not merit. Elon felt the eyes of the chamber upon her. This was the moment she had been briefed to expect. Yet the stark visual representation of Earth's diminished status struck deeper than she had anticipated. The Great Corax Void proposes a simple amendment to Alliance structure. Vornik continued. Earth's permanent seat should be redesignated as a rotating position, to be filled by emerging powers based on objective metrics of civilization advancement. The chamber remained silent, but Elon could sense the calculations occurring behind each representative's eyes, or sensory organs. The Korak's proposal was logical, reasonable even. Earth's position had indeed been preserved largely through tradition and the reluctance of other powers to disrupt established order. Ambassador Mira, the protocol officer prompted. Earth may respond. Elon rose slowly, her mind racing through the briefing materials she had studied for months. None of the standard diplomatic responses seemed adequate against such a logical, data-driven challenge. The delegation from Earth acknowledges Ambassador Vornik's thorough analysis, she began, buying time with formality. However, tradition in governance is not merely sentiment, it is the accumulated wisdom of experience. She gestured to the display, which still showed Earth's diminutive metrics. Yes, Earth is no longer the power it once was. We have chosen a different path, one of cultural preservation rather than expansion, of environmental restoration rather than resource exploitation. Vornik's mask revealed nothing, but his posture suggested dismissal of her argument. The ambassador makes our point, he interjected. Earth has chosen a path of decline, admirable, perhaps, but hardly justification for permanent representation among those who continue to advance galactic civilization. Elon felt the ground shifting beneath her diplomatic position. She needed something more substantial than appeals to tradition or Earth's cultural contributions. Then, a memory surfaced, something from her pre-mission briefing. A cryptic comment from her predecessor about Clause 0 of the Alliance Charter. Ambassador Vornik speaks of metrics and merit, she said, finding her voice growing stronger. But the Alliance's founding documents specify other criteria for permanent representation. I direct the Chamber's attention to Clause 0 of the original Charter. A murmur of genuine surprise rippled through the chamber. Even Celatora's bioluminescent pattern shifted to a configuration Elon had never seen before. The protocol officer's translucent skin flushed with heightened circulation. Ambassador Mira, Clause 0 is a sealed protocol. Its contents are restricted to human representatives. Precisely, Elon replied, sensing an unexpected advantage in the chamber's reaction. And as Earth's representative, I invoke my right to reference it in defense of our position. Vornik's posture shifted subtly, the first sign of genuine reaction. This is absurd. A secret clause that only humans may access? This undermines the very transparency the Alliance claims to uphold. The clause predates the Alliance itself, came an unexpected voice. Captain Nire had stepped forward from his position behind Elon. It was established as a condition of humanity's participation in the post-extinction rebuilding efforts. The protocol officer's multiple hearts visibly accelerated. Captain Nire speaks correctly. Clause 0 is one of 17 foundational protocols that remain sealed by species-specific encryption. Earth's is the only one still active. Because Earth is the only founding species still represented as its original political entity. Ellen added, building on information she hadn't known until this moment. Our continuity of governance is itself a qualification for our position. Vornik's modulated voice took on a harder edge. The Koraks find this arrangement unacceptable. If Earth's position relies on secret protocols, then the basis of that position must be made transparent before it can be recognized. Several representatives signaled agreement, while others remained deliberately neutral. The chamber's atmosphere had shifted from routine procedure to genuine diplomatic tension. Celatora's bioluminescent pattern stabilized into a formal configuration. The Veneri Concord recognizes both positions, perhaps a compromise. Ambassador Mira could reveal the relevant portions of Clause 0 that justify Earth's position, while respecting any historically sensitive content. Elon hesitated. She had invoked Clause 0 as a tactical maneuver, knowing of its existence but not its contents. Now she faced a dilemma: admit her ignorance, potentially undermining Earth's position irreparably, or commit to revealing information she did not possess. Ambassador Mira will need time to consult with Earth's governance regarding declassification protocols. Captain Nire intervened smoothly. The contents of Clause 0 have remained sealed for 7 millennia. Such matters cannot be decided in a preliminary session. The protocol officer's translucent appendages moved in a gesture of procedural acknowledgement. Earth's request for consultation time is consistent with Alliance protocols for classified material. This matter will be revisited in the primary session, scheduled for tomorrow's cycle. Vornik's mask remained impassive, but his voice carried unmistakable warning. The Koraks note that delay tactics changed nothing. If Earth cannot justify its position transparently, that position cannot stand. As the session adjourned, Elan maintained her diplomatic composure until she and Captain Neri had returned to the relative privacy of the Earth delegation's quarters. "Captain," she said the moment the door sealed behind them, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Would you care to explain why I wasn't briefed about this Clause 0? I just staked Earth's position on information I don't have." Nira's weathered face remained impassive. "Because, Ambassador, until today, we weren't certain the clause still existed." "What?" Clause 0 was established 7,213 standard years ago, during the Reconstruction period after the Second Extinction event. Its contents were known only to Earth's representatives of that era, and each subsequent representative received direct transmission from their predecessor. Elon stared at him in disbelief. "Then why wasn't I briefed by Ambassador Kalos before his retirement?" "Because the chain was broken," Neri said simply. Ambassador Kalos died before he could transmit the knowledge, and no backup protocol was ever established, at least, none that Earth Central was aware of. Elon sank into a chair, the weight of realization crushing down upon her. "So I've just committed to revealing something neither of us knows anything about, something that supposedly justifies Earth's entire position in galactic politics." "Not quite," Neri said, his expression shifting slightly. "I said Earth Central wasn't aware of a backup protocol. That doesn't mean one doesn't exist." He reached into his uniform and removed a small crystalline data module, an antiquated storage medium that hadn't been in common use for centuries. This was entrusted to the Earth Guard, to be delivered to an Earth representative only if Clause 0 was ever formally invoked in session, which you just did. Elon took the crystal with trembling fingers. "Why wasn't I told this might happen? Why wasn't I prepared?" "Because knowledge of the clause's existence was itself restricted," Nira explained. "If you had entered the chamber prepared to invoke it, other representatives might have questioned how you knew of something supposedly passed only from predecessor to successor." "Politics," Elon muttered bitterly. "Survival," Nira corrected. "Whatever Clause 0 contains, it has preserved humanity's voice in galactic affairs through 7 millennia of shifting power balances. That doesn't happen by accident." Elon studied the crystal. It had no obvious interface, no markings to indicate how it might be accessed. "How do I—" "It's keyed to human DNA," Nira explained. "Specifically, to the DNA of Earth's recognized representative. Simply hold it and state your full diplomatic title." Elon closed her fingers around the crystal, feeling its cool surface against her skin. "I, Elon Mira, appointed ambassador of the Unified Nations of Earth to the Galactic Peace Alliance, invoke access to Clause 0. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the crystal warmed in her palm, pulsing with a soft blue light that seemed to penetrate her skin. A strange sensation spread up her arm, not painful, but alien, as though information was being transmitted directly into her cellular structure. Images, text, and emotions cascaded through her consciousness. Historical records, diplomatic protocols, and most disturbingly, memories that weren't her own. Memories of devastation on a scale she could barely comprehend. Memories of choices made in desperation. Memories of sacrifice beyond measure. When the flood subsided, Elon found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. Captain Neri knelt beside her, his hand steadying her shoulder. "Ambassador, are you all right?" Elon looked up at him, seeing the veteran soldier with new understanding. "The dark smile incident," she whispered. "You were there when they deployed the countermeasure. You knew what it would cost. Nira's expression didn't change, but a shadow passed behind his eyes. I carried out my orders, as Earthguard has always done, as we will continue to do. Elan rose unsteadily to her feet, the weight of 7,000 years of hidden history pressing down upon her consciousness. We need to prepare for tomorrow's session, she said, her voice finding new resolve. And I need to understand exactly what I can reveal, and what must remain buried. Neri nodded, his posture shifting subtly to one of greater respect. The Earth Guard stands ready, Ambassador. As we have since the pact was sealed, the main council chamber of Trellis 9 dwarfed the protocol chamber where the previous day's preliminary session had been held. Its vast dome displayed a real-time projection of the surrounding star systems, with diplomatic transit routes highlighted in varying colors to indicate traffic volumes and security status. The 14 permanent representatives' platforms were arranged in a perfect circle, with Earth's positioned exactly opposite the entrance, neither the most prominent nor the least, but undeniably central to the chamber's geometry. As Elan took her place, she felt the weight of the knowledge she now carried. Clause 0 was not merely a diplomatic protocol, it was a historical burden, a terrible truth, and perhaps humanity's greatest achievement and deepest shame combined into one. The question now was how much of it she could reveal without undermining the very purpose it had served for millennia. Ambassador Vornik and the Korax delegation entered last, their synchronized movements drawing all eyes. Without preamble, the protocol officer opened the session. By agreement of the permanent representatives, we begin with the procedural matter regarding Earth's permanent status, continued from yesterday's preliminary session. Ambassador Mira has invoked Clause 0 in defense of Earth's position and has been granted time to prepare a presentation on its relevant contents. Elan rose, conscious of every eye, optical sensor, and sensory apparatus in the chamber focused upon her. The knowledge transmitted by the crystal had included not just historical records, but specific diplomatic protocols, including exactly how to address this situation. Esteemed representatives, she began, her voice carrying across the chamber with unexpected authority. Before I address the contents of Clause 0, I must first establish its context. She activated the chamber's central display, projecting a timeline of galactic history that stretched back 8 millennia. 7,213 standard years ago, the galaxy faced extinction. The biological weapon known in our historical records as the Devourers, a self-replicating nanoplague that converted all organic matter into more of itself, had consumed 37 inhabited systems and was spreading exponentially. Images appeared in the display, devastated worlds, fleets in disarray, billions fleeing before an inexorable tide of microscopic destruction. This history is known to all representatives, Vornik interjected. The second extinction event was eventually contained through the combined efforts of the then-dominant species. Its relevance to Earth's current status is unclear. Its relevance, Elan continued steadily, lies in how it was contained. The historical records available to most species indicate that the Devourers were neutralized through a combination of quarantine measures and counter-biological agents. This is partially accurate. She adjusted the display, zooming in on Earth as it appeared 7 millennia ago, a vibrant blue-green world, surrounded by a network of orbital habitats and defense platforms. What the common historical record omits is Earth's central role in developing and deploying the final countermeasure, and the price humanity paid for that deployment. The chamber grew unnaturally still. Even Vornik's typically dismissive posture shifted to one of grudging attention. Clause 0 contains the complete record of Project Firebreak, the development of a counter-nanoplague that could target and neutralize the Devourers. Earth scientists succeeded where others had failed because they took an approach considered too dangerous by other species. They incorporated elements of human DNA into the counter-agent, creating a biological affinity that allowed precise targeting. Elan paused, steeling herself for the difficult truth that followed. The counter-agent was effective, too effective. Once deployed, It would not only neutralize the devourers, but potentially cause cascading biological disruption in any system where both were present. Controlled deployment was essential, but the devourers had already reached the edges of the Sol system. The display shifted to show Earth's defensive fleet positioned in a last line between the advancing nanoplague and the homeworld. Earth's leadership made a decision that would define humanity's place in galactic affairs for the next 7 millennia. Rather than evacuating the homeworld and abandoning the counteragent, they deployed it throughout Earth's biosphere. Gasps and their biological equivalents rippled through the chamber. The counteragent rendered 80% of Earth's population immediately vulnerable to the devourers, a calculated sacrifice to create a perfect trap. When the nanoplague reached Earth, it encountered not just another world to consume, but the only substance in the galaxy specifically engineered to destroy it. The display showed the wave of destruction halting at Earth's outer defenses, then gradually receding as the counteragent spread through infected systems. The price was beyond measure, Ellen continued, her voice steady despite the emotion building within her. 4 billion humans sacrificed themselves to create the biological firebreak that saved the galaxy. Another billion died in the aftermath as Earth's ecosystems collapsed under the strain of both agents. She deactivated the display, facing the chamber directly. Clause 0 is not merely a diplomatic protocol, it is a covenant, established in the aftermath of that sacrifice. The surviving galactic powers unanimously decreed that humanity, a species that had sacrificed the majority of its population to save all sentient life, would always have a voice in determining how peace was maintained. The chamber remained silent as the representatives absorbed this revelation. Even Vornik seemed temporarily at a loss for response. It was Celatora who finally broke the silence, her bioluminescent patterns displaying a configuration Elan now recognized as profound respect. Ambassador Mira speaks truth that aligns with the Venere's deepest historical records. The insectoid diplomat confirmed, "My species was among those who established the covenant. Humanity's sacrifice deserved eternal recognition." Vornik's modulated voice cut through the chamber's somber atmosphere. A moving historical narrative, but one that changes nothing about present realities. Noble sacrifices of ancestors do not confer eternal privileges to descendants who no longer demonstrate the same capacity for contribution. Elan had anticipated this response. The knowledge transmitted by the crystal had prepared her for Vornik's pragmatic dismissal. Ambassador Vornik misunderstands the nature of Clause 0. She replied, "It is not merely recognition of a past sacrifice, but acknowledgement of a continuing responsibility. The seat reserved for humanity is not a privilege, it is a burden we continue to bear." She reactivated the display, this time showing a complex molecular structure. The counteragent developed by Earth's scientists did not simply neutralize the devourers, it became part of humanity's genetic inheritance. Every human born since the second extinction carries within their DNA the capacity to generate the counteragent, a biological fail-safe against any potential return of the nanoplague or similar threats. This revelation sent a visible shock through the chamber. Several representatives leaned forward, their attention intensifying. Earth's permanent seat ensures that any defensive measures developed against future extinction-level biological threats must account for humanity's unique genetic profile. We are, in a very real sense, the galaxy's immune system, a role we did not choose, but one we have never abandoned. Vornik's posture had shifted subtly, but his voice remained dismissive. A convenient claim, but one that lacks verification. If humans truly carry this genetic failsafe, why has this not been documented in the extensive biological exchanges between species? Because, Elin responded, the marker sequence is designed to remain dormant unless activated by specific triggers. Its existence is one of the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets, known only to Earth's representatives and a select few among the founding species. She turned to face Celatora directly. The Veneri maintain the verification protocols, do they not, Ambassador? The insectoid diplomat's bioluminescent patterns shifted in confirmation. We do. It is the oldest continuous duty of our diplomatic corps, predating even our membership in the Alliance. Vornik's voice took on a harder edge. The Corax find this arrangement unacceptable. If Earth's position depends on a biological capability, that capability must be independently verified before it can justify continued representation. The verification protocols exist precisely because of concerns like those the ambassador raises. Ellen countered smoothly. However, they were established with the understanding that widespread knowledge of humanity's genetic modification could lead to attempts to weaponize or neutralize it, potentially eliminating the galaxy's last defense against certain categories of existential threats. The chamber's atmosphere had shifted from diplomatic formality to something more profound. A collective reckoning with a historical truth that had shaped galactic politics for millennia without ever being openly acknowledged. The Corax's concerns have merit. Elin continued, surprising the chamber with her concession. Earth does not seek to maintain its position through secrecy or appeals to ancient authority alone. Therefore, I propose a compromise. She gestured, and the display shifted to show a new diplomatic protocol. Earth will submit to genetic verification according to the established protocols, witnessed by representatives chosen by this body. In return, we ask only that the results remain sealed except in circumstances of genuine existential threat, preserving the security that has protected this failsafe for 7 millennia. The representatives began signaling their positions, with most indicating cautious support for Elon's proposal. Even Vornik, after a momentary hesitation, signaled qualified acceptance. The compromise appears reasonable, the protocol officer announced. Is there further discussion before we formalize this resolution? Vornik stepped forward. The Corax accept Ambassador Mira's proposal with one additional condition. Verification must occur immediately, during this summit, not at some undefined future date. Elan nodded her acceptance. Earth has nothing to hide and no desire to delay. The verification can proceed as soon as the chamber selects its witnesses. As the formal process of selecting verification witnesses began, Captain Nire approached Elan's platform and spoke in a voice too low for the chamber's audio systems to detect. You've bought time, Ambassador, but the Corax won't be satisfied with verification alone. Our intelligence suggests they're pursuing another angle of attack. Elan maintained her diplomatic expression while replying equally quietly. The crystal showed me more than just Clause 0, Captain. It showed me the patterns of those who've tried to remove humanity from the galactic stage before. The Corax are following a familiar playbook. And you have a counter? Elan's eyes tracked Vornik as he conferred with his identical subordinate, so the best defense is to anticipate your opponent's next move. While they're focused on verification, I need access to Trellis 9's historical archives. There's something about the Corax that doesn't align with their claimed history. Nira nodded almost imperceptibly. The Earth Guard will arrange it. An ambassador? He hesitated, then continued. The crystal showed you the historical record. But there are aspects of Clause 0 that activate only in moments of true crisis. Be prepared. Before Elan could ask what he meant, the protocol officer announced the selection of verification witnesses, Sela Torah of the Veneri, a representative of the ancient Methusian collective, and surprisingly, a neutral observer from one of the younger species that had achieved representation only in the past century. The verification would take place in a specialized facility within Trellis 9, designed for the most sensitive biological protocols. As the chamber prepared to adjourn until the results were available, Elan noticed Vornik and his delegation engaged in what appeared to be a tense exchange, their synchronized movements momentarily disrupted. Whatever the Corax were planning, she had little doubt it would come soon. The question was whether the knowledge transmitted by the crystal would be enough to counter it. The archives section of Trellis D9 resembled a living organism more than a traditional data repository. Information was stored in crystalline structures that responded to specific biochemical markers, ensuring that access was limited to authorized species and representatives. The Earth Guard had secured Elan temporary access through diplomatic protocols that hadn't been invoked in generations. Our window is limited, Ambassador, the archive's custodian explained. The being's species was ancient, predating even the Alliance itself, with a physical form that seemed to exist partially in dimensions beyond normal perception. Once verification procedures begin, all diplomatic research access is automatically suspended to prevent interference. Elon nodded, already interfacing with the archive's biological terminal. The knowledge transmitted by the crystal had included specific search parameters, patterns to look for when investigating potential threats to Earth's position. I need historical records on the Corax formation, specifically their claimed lineage from the Void-born collective of the Third Expansion era. The archive pulsed and shifted, crystalline structures realigning to access the requested information. Data flowed into the terminal, displaying timelines, migration patterns, and genetic markers that supposedly trace the Corax back to one of the galaxy's most ancient spacefaring civilizations. Their claimed history is impressive, Elon murmured, scanning the records. 15 millennia of continuous cultural development, technological innovation at every major juncture, ethical stability through multiple expansion phases. Too impressive, came Captain Neri's voice from behind her. He had been scanning parallel records on a secondary terminal. No species evolves without setbacks, ethical compromises, or cultural fractures. Even the Venari acknowledged their age of blood rule. Elon nodded, focusing on inconsistencies in the Corax historical narrative. They claim descent from the Voidborn, yet there's a 2-millennium gap in their developmental timeline during the exact period when the Voidborn were documented to have encountered and integrated with other species. She shifted her search parameters, looking for biological records rather than historical narratives. The crystal's knowledge guided her through search patterns that would have taken traditional researchers decades to formulate. Here, she said finally, highlighting a section of genetic data. The Corax claimed genetic continuity with the Voidborn, but these marker sequences don't align with any known Voidborn subspecies. In fact, they don't align with any naturally evolved pattern at all. The archive custodian drifted closer, multi-dimensional appendages examining the displayed data. Fascinating. These sequences suggest artificial engineering, sophisticated manipulation beyond even current Alliance capabilities. Which raises the question, Neri said grimly, of who or what the Corax really are. Elon expanded her search, cross-referencing the anomalous genetic markers against the archive's complete database. For several minutes, the crystalline structures pulsed and shifted without result. Then, abruptly, they aligned into a pattern that caused the custodian to emit a sound of surprise. The patterns match only one historical record, the ancient being stated, and it is sealed under extinction-level security protocols. Elon felt a chill run through her. Override with diplomatic emergency protocols, authorization mirror Earth 0. The archive pulsed, and a new data stream appeared, one so old that its formatting was barely compatible with modern interfaces. As Elon absorbed the information, her expression hardened. The Corax aren't descendants of the Voidborn, she said quietly. They're engineered from salvaged genetic material of the Devourers themselves. Neera's weathered face showed rare shock. How is that possible? All Devourer biomaterial was supposedly neutralized or contained in isolation facilities. Supposedly, Elon agreed grimly. But this record indicates that a research outpost in the far reaches of what's now Corax space was never confirmed neutralized. It was assumed destroyed in the final containment operations. The archive custodian's form shifted in what might have been agitation. If the Corax have indeed engineered themselves using Devourer templates, they represent a potential existential threat to all biological life in the Alliance. And they're challenging Earth's position, Neri added, the one guaranteed voice for the species that developed the only known counter to the Devourers. Elon closed the terminal interface, her mind racing with implications. We need to get this information to the verification team immediately. The Corax demand for immediate verification makes sense now. They're not just challenging Earth's position. They're attempting to gain access to the counter-agent's genetic sequence. As they turned to leave, the archive's communication system activated with an urgent alert. Emergency protocols engaged throughout Trellis 9, came the station's automated voice. Security breach detected in biological verification suite. All diplomatic personnel returned to designated safe areas. Elan and Nira exchanged alarmed glances. The verification hasn't even begun yet, Elan said. Unless that was never their real objective, Nira replied grimly, already drawing his ceremonial sidearm, which, Elan now realized, was considerably more functional than mere ceremony would require. The archive custodian's form rippled with what might have been fear. The station's power distribution is fluctuating. Secondary systems are being rerouted to external communication arrays. They're calling for reinforcements, Nira stated, checking the weapon's charge. Ambassador, we need to get you to the secure diplomatic bunker immediately. Elan shook her head. No. We need to get to the verification suite. If the Korax are trying to access the counter-agent sequence, they'll need a live human subject. That means Selatora. Nira finished, already moving toward the exit. The Venari were responsible for verification because they're the only ones besides humans who know exactly what to look for. As they raced through Trellis 9's suddenly chaotic corridors, emergency alerts blaring throughout the station, Elan felt the crystal's knowledge unfolding further in her mind. Patterns of crisis response, diplomatic emergency protocols, and something else. Something the crystal had prepared her for but had not fully revealed until this moment. The verification suite was located in the station's most secure sector, surrounded by multiple layers of biological and technological security. By the time Elan and Niri reached the outer perimeter, they found evidence of violence, security personnel of various species unconscious or worse, barriers breached with surgical precision. Standard Korax infiltration pattern, Nira muttered, examining a disabled security mechanism. They're not just diplomatically advanced, they're militarily sophisticated. Elan activated her diplomatic override on a still-functioning terminal. Station status indicates the main Korax delegation is still in their assigned quarters, maintaining the appearance of diplomatic protocol. Deniable assets. Nira nodded grimly. If these infiltrators are discovered, the official delegation will claim no knowledge. They proceeded cautiously, Nire taking point with his weapon ready. The corridors grew increasingly damaged as they approached the suite itself, with signs of energy weapon discharge and what appeared to be biological contamination on several surfaces. That's Venari Ichor, Nira identified, examining a luminescent splatter pattern. Defensive secretion, they put up a fight. The main entrance to the verification suite had been breached with precision, its advanced locking mechanisms disassembled rather than destroyed, the work of specialists who understood the station's security systems intimately. Inside, they found chaos. The suite's specialized equipment had been partially dismantled, components extracted, and interfaces hacked. In the center of the chamber, secured to an examination platform, was Selatora. The Venari diplomat's exoskeleton showed signs of stress, her bioluminescent patterns flickering weakly in distress patterns. Surrounding her were three figures in the distinctive obsidian exosuits of the Korax. Though without the synchronized movements of the official delegation, these moved with individual purpose, one extracting biological samples from the restrained Venari, another interfacing with the suite's specialized equipment, the third standing guard. Niri didn't hesitate. His weapon discharged with precision, striking the guard figure before they could fully react. The energy pulse disrupted something in the exosuit's systems, causing it to lock in position. The remaining two Korax operatives turned immediately, their movements fluid and threatening. The one at the equipment interface activated something on their armor, and a field of shimmering energy enveloped them both. Defense shield, Nira muttered, adjusting his weapon. Military grade. Ambassador Mira, came a modulated voice from one of the operatives, different from Vornik's official diplomatic tone, but carrying the same underlying arrogance. Your presence is unexpected, but not unwelcome. Perhaps you would consent to replace Ambassador Tora in our verification procedure. Elan stepped forward, ignoring Nira's protective gesture. This isn't verification. This is theft of biological data and assault on a diplomatic representative. The full weight of alliance law will do nothing. The operative interrupted smoothly. By the time your cumbersome diplomatic processes begin, the Corax will have what we require, the counteragent sequence that your ancestors so cleverly integrated into human DNA. Elon felt a chill of confirmation. So you can neutralize it, ensure that humans can no longer oppose the return of the Devourers, or rather, your ancestors. The operative's modulated voice betrayed no emotion, but their posture shifted subtly. You are better informed than anticipated. It changes nothing. The future belongs to the Corax void, not to failing biological legacies like Earth. The second operative had continued working throughout this exchange, extracting data from Celatora despite the Venari's weak struggles. The bioluminescent patterns on her exoskeleton were fading, a dangerous sign. She's dying, Elon said sharply. Whatever you're doing is killing her. An unfortunate necessity, the operative replied dismissively. The Venari verification protocols are integrated with their biological systems. Extraction is invasive. Nira's weapon remained trained on the operatives, but the energy shield rendered it temporarily ineffective. Ambassador, we need station security. My communicator is being jammed. Elon nodded, but made no move toward the communication panel. Instead, she stepped closer to the shield, studying its configuration with newfound understanding, knowledge the crystal had imparted specifically for this kind of crisis. You won't succeed, she said calmly. The counteragent sequence isn't something you can simply extract and neutralize. It's integrated throughout human DNA in a distributed pattern, different in each individual but functionally identical. The operative paused momentarily. A clever safeguard, but one we have anticipated. With enough samples. You don't understand, Elon interrupted. The sequence isn't just encoded in our DNA, it's alive, it evolves. What worked against the original Devourers has adapted to counter potential mutations for 7 millennia. She took another step closer, now just inches from the energy shield. That's what Clause 0 really protects. Not Earth's diplomatic status, but the galaxy's ongoing defense against extinction. The operative at the equipment interface turned, a vial of luminescent Venari genetic material in their grasp. We have what we need. The verification protocols contain the targeting parameters for the counteragent. With these, we can develop a neutralizing factor. Unlikely, came a weak, multi-tonal voice. Celatora's bioluminescent patterns had stabilized into a configuration Elon didn't recognize. What you have extracted is not what you think. The Venari diplomat's restraints suddenly released, not from external tampering, but from some internal command she had managed to transmit. As she slumped to the floor, her exoskeleton began to secrete a rapidly expanding field of bioluminescent particles. Venari defense mechanism, Nira warned, stepping back. Ambassador, we need to. But Elon stood her ground, the crystal's knowledge guiding her actions. As the luminescent cloud expanded, she raised her hand toward the energy shield, palm outward. Activate Emergency Protocol 0, she stated clearly. Authorization Mira Earth Firebreak. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the skin of her palm began to glow with the same blue luminescence as the crystal had emitted when she first accessed it. The glow spread up her arm, pulsing with increasing intensity. The Corax operatives took involuntary steps backward, their synchronized movements betraying genuine alarm. What is this? The lead operative demanded, their modulated voice losing its artificial calm. The failsafe, Elon replied, her voice steady despite the strange sensation coursing through her body. When a human representative invokes Emergency Protocol 0 in the presence of Venari verification enzymes, it triggers the dormant counteragent throughout their system. The blue glow had spread to encompass her entire body now, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The energy shield between her and the Corax operatives began to fluctuate, its pattern disrupted by the biological energy she was emitting. The counteragent doesn't just target Devourer nanoplague, she continued, taking another step forward as the shield weakened further. It targets any biological construct derived from Devourer templates, like, for instance, the biological components of your exosuits. and whatever exists beneath them. The shield collapsed entirely, and the blue energy emanating from Eileen surged forward, enveloping the Korhax operatives. Their exosuits began to malfunction, joints locking and systems failing as the counter-agent attacked the biological interfaces within. "Station security is on its way," Neri announced, his communicator suddenly functional again as the Korhax jamming systems failed. "And the main Korhax delegation is being contained." Elon knelt beside Celatora, whose bioluminescent patterns were stabilizing into a healthier configuration. "Ambassador, can you hear me?" The Venari's faceted eyes focused on Elon. The protocol worked as it was designed to 7,000 years ago. "Rest now," Elon told her, as the blue glow gradually faded from her own skin. "The verification has been completed, just not in the way anyone expected." As station security forces swarmed into the suite, securing the disabled Korhax operatives, Elon felt the full weight of what had just occurred and what it meant for Earth's position in the Alliance. The truth of Clause Zero had been demonstrated not through diplomatic argument, but through active defense against the very threat it had been designed to counter. The question now was how this revelation would reshape galactic politics and humanity's role within it. The emergency session of the Alliance Council convened 12 hours after the security breach had been contained. Unlike the formal diplomatic chamber where regular sessions were held, this gathering took place in Trellis 9's Crisis Management Center, a stark utilitarian space designed for rapid decision-making during existential threats. All 14 permanent representatives were present, though the Korhax seat remained conspicuously empty. Ambassador Vornik and his delegation had been detained under Alliance security protocols pending investigation of their connection to the infiltration team. Elon took her place at the central briefing position, still feeling the lingering effects of the counter-agent activation. The station's medical team had assured her the symptoms would fade within days, but the experience had changed her in ways medical science couldn't measure. She had carried the legacy of humanity's greatest sacrifice within her DNA her entire life, but now she had felt its power and its purpose. "Representatives of the Alliance," she began, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "What occurred yesterday was not merely a security breach or an attack on diplomatic protocols. It was an attempted existential strike against the galaxy's defense system against biological warfare." The holographic display activated, showing analytical data from the disabled Korhax operatives' exosuits and biological components. Detailed analysis confirms what our initial investigation suggested. The entity calling itself the Great Korhax Void is not a naturally evolved civilization. It is an engineered construct created from salvaged devourer genetic templates, the same extinction-level threat that nearly consumed the galaxy 7 millennia ago. The chamber remained silent, each representative processing this revelation according to their species' cognitive patterns. It was Ambassador Tora, recovered enough to attend, but still showing signs of her ordeal, who finally spoke. "The Venari verification protocols confirm Ambassador Mira's assessment," she stated, her bioluminescent patterns displaying formal certification configurations. "The biological components of the Korhax operative systems match archived devourer patterns with 98.7% accuracy, allowing for 7 millennia of deliberate engineering and adaptation." The Methusian representative's translucent form pulsed with concern. If the Korhax represent a deliberate resurrection of devourer technology, they constitute an immediate extinction-level threat under Alliance security protocols. Containment procedures must be initiated. A ripple of agreement passed through the representatives, but Elan raised her hand for attention. "Before we proceed with containment decisions, there is another matter that must be addressed: the full truth of Clause Zero, which yesterday's events have now made relevant to all species, not just humanity." She adjusted the display to show the complete text of Clause Zero, now declassified by emergency protocols triggered during the crisis. Clause Zero was never simply about preserving Earth's diplomatic position. It was a failsafe, a living defense system integrated into human DNA, but designed to protect all biological life in the galaxy. The seat reserved for humanity at every peace summit wasn't a privilege granted out of gratitude for past sacrifice. It was a necessary component of ongoing galactic security. The text scrolled through detailed protocols, contingencies, and biological schematics that had remained hidden for 7 millennia. At its core was a simple truth. Humanity had not merely stopped the devourers, they had integrated the only effective defense against them into their very existence. The founders of the Alliance understood something we had forgotten. Ellen continued, "In matters of existential defense, redundancy is essential. Earth's position in galactic affairs ensured that no matter how power shifted, no matter which empires rose or fell, the biological failsafe would always have a voice in decisions that might impact its effectiveness." She deactivated the display, facing the representatives directly. Yesterday, that system worked exactly as designed. When confronted with a deliberate attempt to neutralize the counteragent, Emergency Protocol 0 activated, demonstrating that humanity's role in galactic security remains as vital today as it was 7 millennia ago. The chamber remained silent for a long moment, each representative absorbing the implications of this revelation. Then, one by one, they began to signal formal acknowledgement, the Alliance's highest form of diplomatic consensus. "The Alliance acknowledges the truth of Clause 0, the protocol officer announced, and reaffirms Earth's permanent representation status, not as a diplomatic courtesy, but as an essential component of galactic security architecture." Elon inclined her head in the precise 15-degree bow that denoted acceptance without presumption. Earth acknowledges this responsibility and recommits to its ancient obligation. With the immediate question of Earth's status resolved, the discussion turned to the Corax threat. Analysis of their ships, now quarantined in Trellis 9's security field, had revealed concerning similarities to historical Devourer technology, particularly in their propulsion and weapons systems. "The Corax have positioned themselves as an ascendant power," noted a representative from one of the Alliance's militarily significant members. "With diplomatic and trade relationships throughout the mid-rim systems, containment will be complex and necessary," Elon added firmly. "Not as punishment, but as existential security. The Devourer templates they're built upon aren't merely technological, they're philosophical. The drive to consume and convert is encoded in their foundational structures." After hours of debate, a consensus emerged. The Corax would be contained through a combination of diplomatic isolation, technology restrictions, and continuous monitoring. Their status as an Alliance member would be suspended pending a complete biological evaluation of their entire civilization, a process that would take years, perhaps decades. As the session concluded, Celatora approached Elon in the corridor outside the crisis center. "Earth has carried this burden alone for too long," the Venari diplomat said, her bioluminescent patterns displaying a configuration of profound respect. "The verification protocols my ancestors established were meant to confirm the counteragent's continued viability, not to isolate humanity with sole responsibility for its maintenance." Elon nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps that was the original intent. But 7 millennia of secrecy created its own momentum. Each generation of Earth's representatives inherited the burden without questioning whether it should be shared. And now we have an opportunity to reshape that understanding. Elon replied, "Earth's seat remains secure, but the responsibility it represents should be more widely understood, not to diminish humanity's role, but to strengthen the galaxy's collective defense." Celatora's mandibles clicked in what Elon had learned was thoughtful agreement. A wisdom worthy of those who first created the counteragent. Speaking of which, she hesitated, then continued. "The activation you experienced was unprecedented in our records. The protocol was designed as a defensive measure, not an offensive weapon." "I'm not sure it was either," Elon admitted. "It felt more like recognition, as though the counteragent was identifying a threat it had been designed to counter and responding accordingly, suggesting a level of embedded intelligence we hadn't previously documented." Tora noted, "The implications for future security protocols are significant." Before Elon could respond, Captain Neri approached, his formal stance indicating official business. Ambassador, Earth Central has acknowledged our transmission regarding the Korax situation. They've authorized a full disclosure of Clause 0 to the Alliance Security Council, with appropriate historical context. Elon nodded, feeling a weight lifting from her shoulders, the burden of 7 millennia of solitary responsibility beginning to shift toward a more balanced distribution. Captain, arrange transport back to Earth as soon as the Alliance concludes its immediate security protocols. I believe it's time for a comprehensive review of all our historical agreements, not to change them, but to ensure they're serving their original purpose in a galaxy that's evolved beyond their initial context. Neri saluted crisply. The Earth Guard stands ready, Ambassador, as we have since the pact was sealed. As Elon prepared for the journey home, she found herself drawn to the same viewport where she had stood before the summit began, watching the blue-white pulsar at the edge of the trellis system. Its rhythmic flashes seemed different now, not cold and distant, but vital and necessary, like the heartbeat of the galaxy itself. A message from Earth Central had arrived, acknowledging her actions during the crisis and formally commending her for preservation of Earth's diplomatic standing. The message missed the point entirely, focusing on political positioning rather than the deeper truth she had uncovered. Earth's seat at the galactic table had never been about diplomatic status or historical courtesy. It was about responsibility, a burden accepted by a species that had sacrificed the majority of its population to save all sentient life, and then committed itself to standing eternal watch against the return of that threat. The ancient humans who had created the counter-agent hadn't sought glory or dominance. They had simply done what was necessary, then established systems to ensure their sacrifice would not be forgotten or rendered meaningless by future political shifts. As the pulsar flashed again, Elon thought of the words that had echoed in her mind when the crystal had first shared its knowledge with her, words attributed to the scientists who had developed the counter-agent, knowing it would doom billions of their own people. If there is one seat left among the ashes, let it be reserved for humans, for they will be the last to negotiate when no one else is willing to listen. Those words had shaped 7 millennia of galactic politics, preserving humanity's voice long after their military and economic power had waned, not as a courtesy to the past, but as an investment in the future. A recognition that survival sometimes required perspectives that valued life above power, cooperation above dominance. The seat reserved for humans at every Interstellar Peace Summit wasn't a privilege. It was a promise, a commitment to remember the price of peace and to ensure it never needed to be paid again. As Trellis 9 rotated away from the pulsar's light, Elon turned from the viewport and began preparing for the journey home. Earth awaited, its diminished glory still burning with the quiet determination of a species that had faced extinction and chosen sacrifice instead of surrender. The counter-agent still flowed in her veins, in the veins of every human born since the second extinction. Not just a biological defense, but a living legacy. A reminder that humanity's greatest strength had never been conquest or dominance, but the willingness to negotiate when no one else would listen and to sacrifice when nothing else would suffice. That was the true meaning of the seat reserved for humans at every Interstellar Peace Summit. Not what humanity had been, but what they had chosen to become. Guardians of a promise made 7,000 years ago, and kept through every shifting power balance since. A promise as simple as it was profound, that no matter how the galaxy changed, some things would remain constant. The pulsar's rhythm, the counter-agent's vigilance, and humanity's quiet, unwavering commitment to ensure that life, in all its diversity, would continue.